to keep everything in context, bring us back, bring our minds back to where we are. Maitreya was describing the initial population of the universe. And he described the first incarnation of the Lord Varaha, in the Swayambhuva Manu Kalpa. And he described the whole pastime. He described how Manu had asked, what should I do about this planet that's at the bottom of the ocean? And while he was contemplating what to do, Lord Brahma had a little boar come out of his nostril. The appearance of Lord Varaha was the previous chapter. And Maitreya described all the different events of how the Lord dived into the ocean, picked up the earth, brought it back, and saved the earth planet from that condition. After hearing that pastime, Vidura asked that I've also heard this pastime, but I heard that the Lord killed a demon named Hiranyaksha. So can you please explain that to me? And Maitreya is now merging or answering by describing the second incarnation of the Lord during the Chakshusha Manu. And he's starting off with this chapter that we're reading now, the pregnancy of Diti. And we read last week how Diti, how Maitreya heard this narration by Lord Brahma when he spoke it to the demigods long ago. So he's repeating this history. And Lord Brahma started by a short description of Diti approaching Kasyapa, her husband, desiring to be impregnated so that she could also have sons, along with her co-wives and sisters, other wives of Kasyapa. So we'll start there. If you're not speaking, everybody, please remember to mute. Okay, this is Srimad-Bhagavatam, May 2022, lessons 1 and 2. This is chapter 3, canto 3, chapter 14, pregnancy of Diti in the evening, text 16. Maitreya continued, after being asked by Vidura, O Vidura, Diti, thus being afflicted by the contamination of lust, and therefore poor and talkative, was pacified by the son of Marichi in suitable words. Purport. When a man or woman is afflicted by the lust of sex desire, it is to be understood as sinful contamination. Kasyapa was engaged in his spiritual activities, but he did not have sufficient strength to refuse his wife, who was thus afflicted. He could have refused her with strong words, expressing impossibility, but he was not strong. He was not as spiritually strong as Vidura. Vidura is addressed here as a hero because no one is stronger in self-control than a devotee of the Lord. It appears that Kasyapa was already inclined to have sexual enjoyment with his wife, and because he was not a strong man, he tried to dissuade her only with pacifying words. Are you okay, Samapriya? I hear you coughing all the time. Do you want Nanda to take over? Unmute if you're going to speak.
I'm okay for now. Thank you. Are we going on?
Yes.
Okay, before we go on, these purports and this section is very profound. Could you just put it back for 1 second, Patti, to the next one? This statement of poor and talkative, I think, is very important, actually. When one is contaminated with lust, it's considered to be that person is poor and talkative. One talks a lot, which is one of the senses that we try to control and automatically becomes controlled when we're engaged in chanting and speaking Krishna Katha. So I thought that was a really important point. Okay, we'll go on now with Tisha. Would you like to read?
Yes, thank you. So good to see you, Mataji.
Thank you.
Okay, Kasyapa said, O afflicted one, I shall forthwith gratify whatever desire is dear to you, for who else but you is the source of the three perfections of liberation. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Conditional material existence is based on sense gratification, and if someone has the good fortune to get a good wife, he is helped by the wife in all respects. If one is disturbed in his conditional life, he becomes more and more entangled in material contamination. A faithful wife is supposed to cooperate with her husband in fulfilling all material desires so that he can then become comfortable and execute spiritual activities for the perfection of life. If, however, the husband is progressive in spiritual advancement, the wife undoubtedly shares in his activities, and thus both the wife and the husband profit in spiritual perfection. It is essential, therefore, that girls as well as boys be trained to discharge spiritual duties so that at the time of cooperation, both will be benefited. The training of the boy is brahmacharya, and the training of the girl is chastity. A faithful wife and spiritually trained brahmachari are a good combination for advancement of the human mission.
Thank you. There's so many things to talk about in these purports, but I think we'll just go on for a little while and then have a discussion. This in the world today, there is not such a clear understanding about the roles of men and women, and these instructions and this conversation is really important for that subject. All right, let's go on now. Nandaji, could you grace us with speaking? Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Srimad-Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, Chapter 14, Text 18 and 19. As one can cross over the ocean with a seagoing vessel, one can cross the dangerous situation of the material ocean by living with a wife. O respectful one, a wife is so helpful that she is called the better half of a man's body because of her sharing in all auspicious activities. A man can move without anxiety, entrusting all responsibilities to his wife. Srila Prabhupada's purport. By the Vedic injunction, the wife is accepted as the better half of a man's body because she is supposed to be responsible for discharging half of the duties of the husband. Marriage is actually a duty performed in mutual cooperation as directed in the authoritative scriptures for spiritual advancement. Therefore, marriage is essential in order to avoid the life of cats and dogs who are not meant for spiritual enlightenment.
Okay, now Nanda speak. Nanda, tell us what this all about.
Well, the word that strikes out, or the phrase that strikes out, is that marriage is actually a duty. Unfortunately, most of us started off thinking that marriage was for pleasure, for this, or have different attitudes towards it. And when those attitudes or those ideas in the mind aren't met, then there's disappointment, et cetera, et cetera. But if we approach it as a duty, just like so many other duties we have, sometimes then the bond is stronger. It's a stronger bond. And then when the ups and downs of life happen, which they do, one continues on for a higher purpose. It's a duty, happiness will be there. Okay, but not all the time. The stress will be there. Okay, but not all the time. But we go through it in a sense of duty, and hopefully you make it to the end.
Right. That's beautiful. Also, yes. In
the Sanskrit, is it described as half the men, the better half? Is that in the Sanskrit?
Oh, I don't have the Sanskrit with me.
Yes, I'm looking at the Sanskrit in the second verse in text. Oh, am I on 19? Is that because I can't now? I don't see the screen in front of me. Are we on text 19 too?
Yeah, 18, 19, yeah.
Okay, so in the Sanskrit, it says ardham, half. He, thus half. So, oh, respectful one. This is a translation to 19. The wife is so helpful, she's called the better half, and that's there, ardham, half.
Thank you.
In any case, Srila Prabhupada translated like that, but it does say it in the Sanskrit. Another addition to that, I would think that this duty, who are we doing the duty for? Who are we serving? Who are we doing the duty for?
That's a good question.
You know, so if we understand who we're performing this duty for, then it will last. Otherwise, you know, maybe you don't like doing it after a while, so you want to change the person you're doing the duty for. So who are we basically doing the duty for? Anyone can say? Jayashree, she's been through a very progressive life with her husband and her 6 children. Who are we doing the duty for, Jayashree? Okay, I can read lips, but I can't hear you.
Krishna.
Okay, that's it. Okay, we're doing the duty for Krishna because actually when new people just get married and they ask me some question about it, you know, if you're not doing it for Krishna, you will come to situations that you don't know why you're in that relationship, you know, so that you have to know we're doing it for Krishna as our service to Krishna. Thank you. Okay, let's go on with Jayashree reading. Would that be all right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Nandaji.
Srimad-Bhagavatam 3:14-20. As a fort very easily conquers invading plunderers, by taking shelter of a wife, one can conquer the senses, which are unconquerable in the other social orders. Purport: the bodily senses are plunderers of the fort of the body. The wife is supposed to be the commander of the fort, and therefore, when there is an attack on the body by the senses, it is the wife who protects the body from being crushed. The sex demand is inevitable for everyone, but one who has a fixed wife is saved from the onslaught of the sense enemies. A man who possesses a good wife does not create a disturbance in society by corrupting virgin girls. Without wife, man becomes about to the first order and is a nuisance in society, unless he is a trained brahmachari, vanaprastha, or sannyasi. Unless there is rigid, systematic training of the brahmachari by the expert spiritual master, and unless the student is obedient, it is sure that the so-called brahmachari will fall prey to the attack of sex. There are so many instances of fall down, even for great yogis like Vishvamrita. A grihastha is saved, however, because of his faithful wife.
Okay, so just want to ask Jayashree just a question. What does it mean, rigid?
Yeah.
Sometimes rigid is a disturbing word in the world today. What does that mean in this context, rigid?
Where is it? Oh, unless there is rigid systematic training. Just strict training, rigid and systematic training of the brahmachari by the expert spiritual master. So they spend enough time being strict in that ashram and hearing and learning why. I think it says in the next one that how the brahmachari is supposed to be, I forgot what they were, but the women, the boys and girls. So the girls are trained to be chaste, and the boys are trained to be obedient, and strict, and servants of Krishna.
Yeah,
so
that's it. In order to achieve anything in this world, people go to school, they adhere to what they're doing to achieve their materialistic goals, or you can just do whatever you like and have a good old time. And this is not the way to accept spiritual life. and accept progressive life. There is strict adherence.
Yeah.
Strict adherence means that we accept an authority and we follow it. Am I right? Anyone
Yeah.
think?
And following the four regulative principles, obviously.
Yeah, that's not a joke. I mean, I had a crisis, and and actually I had something to hold on to because I've been doing this for a while. But even then, we are going to be faced with crises. So this is not a joke. We are seriously being given an opportunity if we follow strictly, and Krishna will reciprocate. It's a gentle thing. He's gentle, but he's also like a thunderbolt. So strictness must be there, not this lavish. Okay, thank you.
If I may, rigid.
Yeah, please.
Rigid also means that, at least in the Vedic ideal, that boys and girls don't mix together when they're younger. When we were on Padayatra, we went to Udupi, which is the Madhvacharya Sampradaya place. And in that temple, there's a temple in the middle of the town, and there are 8 different ashrams which surround the temple. And all the young boys in the town are sent to the ashrams when they're young. That's what Gurukula is. And it was amazing because when we went to the temple for darshan, everybody was there taking darshan, and then they blew the conch shell and everybody parted to both sides of the temple. And the sannyasis and the boy brahmacharis walked into the temple. They came and, with their heads down, but then they took darshan of the deity, did some rituals and things like that, and then left. And then everybody else mingled back into the middle of the room again. So the point is that young boys don't really even have any association with young girls or women until they're older, or until they're the type of people that go back and forth from home. They meet their mothers and sisters, but they don't have intimate contact. Whereas in today's world, as Samapriya pointed out in Kali Yuga, the system is so confusing. Boys don't even know if they're boys, and girls don't even know if they're girls in today's society. It's so confusing. So rigid means like that in the ideal sense.
Thank you, Pandit. Thank you. We're going to go on now with Sesha.
Yes.
And he will enlighten us some more about this whole process. Thank you, Sesha.
Srimad-Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, 14th Chapter, Text 21. O Queen of the Home, we are not able to act like you, nor could we repay you for what you have done, even if we worked for our entire life, or even after death. To repay you is not possible, even for those who are admirers of personal qualities. Purported by Srila Prabhupada, so much glorification of a woman by her husband indicates that he is henpecked or is talking lightly in joke. Kashyapa meant that householders living with wives enjoy the heavenly blessings of sense enjoyment and at the same time have no fear of going down to hell. The man in the renounced order of life has no wife and may be driven by sex desire to seek another woman or another's wife and thus go to hell. In other words, the so-called man of the renounced order who has left his house and wife goes to hell if he again desires sexual pleasure, knowingly or unknowingly. In that way, the householders are on the side of safety. Therefore, husbands as a class cannot repay their debt to women either in this life or in the next. Even if they engage themselves in repaying the woman throughout their whole lives, it is still not possible. Not all husbands are as able to appreciate the good qualities of their wives, but even though one is able to appreciate these qualities, it is still not possible to repay the debt to the wife. Such extraordinary praises by a husband for his wife are certainly in the mood of joking.
Seshaji, there's a lot in this purport. Can you explain some of it?
Well, I have a question about the purport. It seems to go back between the idea that this was joking behavior between Kashyapa and Aditi, and continuing the same thread of how the wife protects the husband from sense enjoyment. As I said, I'm a little confused. What's the emphasis here?
Well, I have a question for you. What kind of wife? Any kind of wife? Of course, there must be respect between two partners, but how does what is the wife's duty to have the husband so indebted in this manner? It can't, I mean, there has to be some qualification for someone to be glorified like that, or that position of a wife. If we don't even take the people and put them in it, we just have the position of a wife to a husband in this. These are the positive aspects. So what is the wife? How is the wife supposed to act in this? Or how is the husband supposed to glorify any wife? Or what is that relationship supposed to be that would be worthy of such glorification?
Well, I think that the term Dharma Patni, which some devotees use to address their wife, is the answer to your situation, your question. The wife leads the couple, leads the family in the performance of its religious duties. Earlier, you were talking about duties to who? So duties to Krishna, Dharma Patni, that's the wife's role. And that Dharma protects the husband and the entire family.
Very good. Dharma Patni, perfect.
So,
anything else, Aisha?
Yeah, just more questions. I don't know if I'm getting more answers and questions, but I guess a question would be, as we're reading this, like 50 years in, how are we doing in this regard?
Right.
I think that's a question that these verses and purports evoke from me, is looking at our society, and because we have a long way to go. And maybe these words, as you said, Samapriya, are disorientating to people even today.
Yeah. But when you said 50 years in, we're 50 years in, that has to mean something. That shows some seriousness about the application of the philosophy. Nandaji?
Well, my comment is, you didn't answer Seix's first question. You answered Seix's question by asking another question, and you didn't talk to his first question.
What was the first question, Seixaji? Thank you, Nanda.
We're talking about, because it has to do with this also point, but he was raising the point that the end of the purport was talking about, the second last sentence says, not all husbands are able to appreciate the good qualities of their wives, but even though one is able to appreciate these qualities, it is still not possible to repay the debt to the wife. And then Prabhupada says, such extraordinary praises by a husband for his wife are certainly in the mood of joking, which seems totally pulling the rug out from the sentence that he just said before. I believe that's what your question.
It's true. We see this a lot, that Prabhupada says two opposite things in the same sentence, even sometimes. Both are to be considered. Patti, can you say something about that? I don't want to leave this question unanswered. Go on, Patti.
Knowing how the story unfolds, let us try to understand a little bit about the psychology that Kashyapa is using. He knows his wife, he knows her desires, he knows how she's approached him, and he's ultimately going to refuse her request, or at least ask her and enthuse her to postpone it. So rather than just cutting off the topic and saying no, he's like buttering her up a little bit, and he's explaining philosophically, it's true what he's saying, that the wife is the better half and she helps him in his duties. So in one way, what he's doing is he's putting a little pressure on her to act properly by being a Dharma Patni, and because he's going to ultimately go in to say in the next verses that the time isn't right, so let us not do this. So I think that's a little bit of what Prabhupada's talking about, that he will see ultimately also that he's a little weak in his resolve, that she's very strong, but I think all those different emotions and features are also included in this conversation. That's my comment.
Let's go on, because it will become clearer, but that's a very good point to keep in mind. Thank you, Sesha, and thank you, Pati. How about we go on reading with Manvantara? Manvantara ji? Wait, see.
Text 22 and through 24. Even though it is not possible to repay you, I shall satisfy your sex desire immediately for the sake of begetting children. But you must wait for only a few seconds so that others may not reproach me. This particular time is most inauspicious because at this time, the horrible looking ghosts and constant companions of the Lord of the ghosts are visible. Lord Shiva, the king of the ghosts, sits on the back of his bull carrier, travels at this time, accompanied by ghosts who follow him for their welfare. Purport. Ghosts are bereft of a physical body because of their grievously sinful acts, such as suicide. The last resort of the ghostly characters in human society is to take shelter of suicide, either material or spiritual. Material suicide causes loss of the physical body, and spiritual suicide causes loss of the individual identity. Mayavadi philosophers desire to lose their individuality and merge in the impersonal spiritual Brahmayoti existence. Lord Shiva, being very kind to the ghosts, sees that although they are condemned, they get physical bodies. He places them in the wombs of women who indulge in sexual intercourse regardless of the restrictions on time and circumstance. Kasyapa wanted to impress this fact upon Diti so that she might wait for a while.
Thank you, Manvantara. Suicide. Two kinds of suicide. Very, very profound. Patti, could you bring it back to the words again? Maybe it'd be easier. So it seems to me, and I want your comment on this, Manvantara, that suicide is being committed by most people in this world today because they're not using their human form of life to achieve the goal of life. So that is what Prabhupada's talking about spiritual suicide. And so how can you, what's your comment on that? Manvantaraji.
Well, it's because no one knows, right? If no one knows the goal of life and why we're here, I mean, instead of searching out the question of why are we here, people are seen to be committing suicide.
Yeah, because of based on ignorance. So why is there ignorance? Is it only up to the devotees to go out there? Why do people have ignorance in the first place? It must be based on something about them. Does anyone know? What is it? Desire. It's the desire. It's the desire of the living entity to reject their constitutional position. And that is actually suicide.
I have a question. How did you get that from this purport? I don't see anything.
Well, Prabhupada's talking about suicide. He's talking about
killing the body. He's not just talking about.
And he said spiritual suicide causes cost of causes loss of the identity. And he's only referring to Mayavadis.
Exactly.
But
so how did you get to?
Well, I'm thinking when I read it, I'm seeing that spiritual suicide is being committed by people who, most people in the world, until they take to God consciousness. And
Okay,
this is
that's one concept, but I
I'm
was
very-
wondering,
I'm a
I was wondering how you
pessimistic
got
head.
there from this purport.
That's what I'm explaining. That's the way I
Okay.
got there. But we could
Okay.
go on now. I don't, maybe that's a little morose, but it is a point that a preacher takes very seriously, that people are lost in this world committing spiritual suicide. They're totally in ignorance about the goal of life. That's what Manvantara reminded us of. So it's our duty, those who know about Krishna, to not engage in that spiritual suicide, take these things very seriously, and try to awaken this in others. So
Okay. I understand that. Before we go on, I just want to make one more point back to the purport itself, that there's a real important philosophical point that's being made here, is that Lord Shiva places people who have committed suicide and are in ghostly bodies. He's merciful to them by placing them into the wombs of women who are not properly following religious principles. So therefore, not only are unwanted children born, especially in Kali Yuga, but actually unqualified people are being born. It's almost as if they're not qualified for bodies, but he's merciful. So he puts them into these circumstances because they arise. So he's warning Diti of the negative reactions, which we will see will manifest.
Thank you. Oh my God, this is serious. Thank you. Premananda, are you still here, Premananda? Nice to see you here.
Yes,
Hare
I'm here.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Jai Premananda, Hari Bol.
Nice to
Haribol.
have your presence here. Why don't you read the next verse, Premananda?
Okay. Srimad-Bhagavatam 3:14-25. Lord Shiva's body is reddish, and he is unstained, but he is covered with ashes. His hair is dusty from the whirlwind dust of the burning crematorium. He is the younger brother of your husband, and he sees with his 3 eyes. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Lord Shiva is not an ordinary living entity, nor is he in the category of Vishnu or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is far more powerful than any living entity up to the standard of Brahma, yet he is not on an equal level with Vishnu. Since he is almost like Lord Vishnu, Shiva can see past, present, and future. One of his eyes is like the sun, another is like the moon, and his third eye, which is between his eyebrows, is like fire. He can generate fire from his middle eye, and he is able to vanquish any powerful living entity, including Brahma. Yet he does not live pompously in a nice house, etc., nor does he possess any material properties, although he is master of the material world. He lives mostly in the crematorium, where dead bodies are burned, and the whirlwind dust of the crematorium is his bodily dress. He is unstained by material contamination.
Okay, I have to take back when I said morose. This is really crucial information here. What do you have to tell us about this, Premananda? Anything?
Well, it really shows Lord Shiva's extraordinarily powerful position, even though he lives in the crematorium and he's like and dressed, covered with ashes. We should not take him like an ordinary living entity. You know, he's very, very powerful. And Lord Shiva is also called Bhutnath because he is the master of all those ghosts and people who have ghostly characters and personalities. That's because he's very merciful on them, and he tries to deliver them and uplift them and bring them to the level of proper religious principles. So yeah, Lord Shiva's personality is very, very admirable and is worth worshipping.
I have a question though, I'm sorry. Why is he living in the crematorium? I mean, he could have all those exalted aspects without living in such a place. It's not a very pleasant place. Why is he living in the crematorium? What is that?
Yeah, my one understanding that I have is he's totally renounced. It doesn't matter to him. He's totally transcendental, whether he's living in a crematorium or he's living in Mount Kailash. That's one thing. And the other thing, as I said, because he lives in the crematorium, so people like ghosts and like people totally in the gross mode of ignorance, they can identify with him and then they can worship him and follow him, and Lord Shiva will gradually bring them up to the level of devotion to the Supreme Lord. So that's my take on this.
Pati, you're shaking your head. Is that correct?
I'm agreeing with the point, but I also have a different aspect to why he remains in the crematorium. If you remember back to our conversations in the very beginning of creation, when Lord Mahavishnu glances over material nature, he infuses it with spirit. That combination, according to Brahma Samhita, is the Lord Shiva energy, where matter and spirit are combined. That energy is dominated and controlled by Lord Shiva. So when a person dies, what's actually happening is that spirit is leaving the material cage or material uniform or body that soul is in. So it's actually, he's personally conducting the transfer of spirit out of matter and then taking to Yamaraj, and that goes on to another realm where the person is judged according to their right and wrong activities. So his abode of action in the material world, I mean, think of any moment in any planet, in any universe, there are billions of births and deaths taking place at every moment. And he's in charge of that process. So that's one of my understandings of why he's there.
Wow, that's
Along with what Premananda said, which was very nice.
Yeah,
I have not heard that explanation before, so it's very profound. Thank you.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go on with Chaitamayi. Chaita, you want to read this?
Yes, it's so nice to have your association again, Mata.
Hare Krishna.
Srimad-Bhagavatam 14:26. Lord Shiva regards no one as his relative, yet there is no one who is not connected with him. He does not regard anyone as very favorable or abominable. We respectfully worship the remnants of his foodstuff, and we vow to accept what is rejected by him. Purport. Kashyapa informed his wife that just because Lord Shiva happened to be his brother-in-law, that should not encourage her in her offense towards him. Kashyapa warned her that actually Lord Shiva is not connected with anyone, nor is anyone his enemy. Since he is one of the three controllers of the universal affairs, he is equal to everyone. His greatness is incomparable because he is a great devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is said that among all the devotees of the Personality of Godhead, Lord Shiva is the greatest. Thus, the remnants of foodstuff left by him are accepted by other devotees as Maha Prasad, or great spiritual foodstuff. The remnants of foodstuff offered to Lord Krishna are called prasad, but when the same prasad is eaten by a great devotee like Lord Shiva, it is called Maha Prasad.
Thank you. What do you think about Maha Prasad?
I'm confused in hearing this explanation of Maha Prasad. I didn't know that it could have an upgrade in being served to Lord Shiva after being offered to Lord Krishna. So it's inexplicable to me. Perhaps someone has an explanation for that.
Well, I have a story that I'm not going to tell at this time, but it's a story about Lord Shiva and how he is hankering for the remnants of Krishna's prasad. And when he finally does receive the Maha Prasad, then everyone in the whole world, in the whole universe is happy. But tune in next time. I'm not strong enough to tell that story. But can anyone else say why Maha Prasad is so valuable? Pati, what about in Puri with the Maha Prasad and how actually...
There's a story in Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's been a while since I read it, but I think his name was Kalidas. He was an uncle of Raghunath Das Goswami. And when he came to Puri, he got special mercy by Lord Chaitanya. And the question was asked, why? And Kalidas's habit was that he would always search for the Maha Prasad, foods offered not only to the deity, but two great devotees of the Lord. And then he wanted to take their remnants as a feeling of servant of the servant of the servant. And he brought Mamu Thakur some mangoes and his wife, and he brought them some mangoes and just left the house, but then he went and he hid in the bushes. And Mamu Thakur and his wife ate the mangoes. They put them in a leaf plate. They came and they throw them in the little pile like a compost. And Kalidas sneaked out and he grabbed those mangoes and he was licking the skins and he was enjoying the pit and everything like that. And this type of action by the devotee was very pleasing to Lord Chaitanya. So he bestowed his mercy upon Kalidas. That's just one example of Maha Prasad. Also Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ate his plate and then they brought that plate before the devotees. There was a mad rush to take those remnants.
Also in Jagannath Puri, Durga, what is that? Bimala. Bimala is the name of Durga, and she is sitting in the center in the Puri temple. And when all the prasad is being offered, after it's being offered to Lord Jagannath, before it goes to the public, it's offered to Bimala. And actually Bhaktisiddhanta's name is Bimala Prasad in honor of that Maha Prasad. And there's a story about why that happens, but we won't tell it.
And then there's another topic, another story where in Nandagram, they do the same thing. There's deities of Krishna and Balaram. And after they make the offering, they take portions of that offering to the Nandishwar Lord Shiva linga, which is right at the entrance to the temple. And they offer him the prasad.
And this is a standard practice, actually, offering the prasad that's first offered to Krishna. If we offer to the pure devotee, and Lord Shiva is the Vaishnavanam Yata Shambhu, the greatest of all devotees. So he gets that prasad. And then if you take that prasad, all these are spiritually potent. You take that prasad.
What do you do at your house?
Oh, I will tell you what we do at our house. There we go. My daughter has a temple for Lord Shiva that her husband built for her. Mahadev is standing there and many Shiva lingas, and it's a whole worship that she has. And it's based on this pastime of Lord Shiva. I didn't want to tell it, but I'm getting enlivened. So Lord Shiva is very anxious to accept the Mahaprasad from Krishna. So what we do is she makes her offering to Lord Chaitanya, Granitai, and then the same plate, she walks outside and puts it in front of the deity of Lord Shiva. So then that's her main service is caring for Lord
Shiva
in that way.
You wrote a nice poem. I'll put that up on the forum, and that way everybody can understand the story.
It's a poem about Lord Shiva in the mood of honoring the Mahaprasad and of Lord Krishna. It's a very, very sweet, very, very sweet. And it's so nice to realize that Lord Shiva is such a wonderful devotee and wants to encourage all in the Brihat. Nanda, you know about this. We also are reading in the Brihat Bhagavatam how Lord Shiva is honored and worshipped and the greatest devotee of the Lord. And he makes festivals so that he can engage everyone in chanting the holy name and in serving Krishna. So it's so wonderful to understand who Lord Shiva is. It's a wonderful study in ecstasy. And now that it looks like we have to go on, right? We're going on. Thank you, everybody. That was great. So now we're going to have Midoriya Leela. Could you read, Midoriya? Midoriya Ji.
Sure.
Yeah, there you go.
Bhagavatam 3:14, 27 to 28. Although no one in the material world is equal to or greater than Lord Shiva, and although his unimpeachable character is followed by great souls to dismantle the mass of missions, he nevertheless remains as if a devil to give salvation to all devotees of the Lord. Unfortunate, foolish persons, not knowing that he's engaged in his own self, laugh at him. Such foolish persons engage in maintaining the body, which is eatable by dogs, with dresses, ornaments, garlands, and ointments. Prabhupada's purport. Lord Shiva never accepts any luxurious dress, garland, ornament, or ointment. The real purpose of Lord Shiva is to serve the soul of the soul, Lord Krishna. He desires that all luxurious articles such as nice garments, garlands, ornaments, and cosmetics be given to Lord Krishna only, because Krishna is the real enjoyer. He refuses to accept such luxurious items himself because they are only meant for Krishna. However, since they do not know this purpose of Lord Shiva, foolish persons either laugh at him or profitlessly try to imitate him. So this is another reason why Lord Shiva stays in the crematorium.
Because he doesn't need any ornaments or ointments. Some you have to unmute.
Yeah.
No, that's wonderful. Yeah. I was at a crematorium one time and somehow or another found myself there standing on literally centuries of ashes. And when I realized that, I couldn't be in there anymore. It was a very profound experience. It was in Jagannath Puri. A friend of ours had passed away, and usually women don't go. And I was right there. And when I realized that I was standing on ashes of bodies for centuries and centuries, I had to remove myself from that place. I wanted Midoriya Leela to read the next one because actually I see it's getting a little late. We have a lot to read still. So let's go on with that. Midoriya Ji.
This is 3:14-29. Demigods like Brahma also follow the religious rites observed by him. He is the controller of the material energy, which causes the creation of the material world. He is great, and therefore his devilish characteristics are simply imitation. Purport. Lord Shiva is the husband of Durga, the controller of the material energy. Durga is personified material energy, and Lord Shiva, being her husband, is the controller of the material energy. He is also the incarnation of the mode of ignorance and one of the three deities representing the Supreme Lord. As his representative, Lord Shiva is identical with the Supreme Personality Godhead. He is very great, and his renunciation of all material enjoyment is an ideal example of how one should be materially unattached. One should therefore follow in his footsteps and be unattached to matter, not imitate his uncommon acts like drinking poison.
Wow. Thank you. Any comments on that real quick?
It just shows that Lord, we could follow in his footsteps by being renounced, but not imitate him.
Right.
And,
Right. Following. We follow, we don't imitate. Because we can imitate, let's be honest. We can't imitate, but that's why we're in the material world, because we thought we could imitate. Okay, let's go on with Ian reading.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
And
Bol.
wait a second.
Wait.
Before you read, it looks like Chaita has a question or wants to make a statement. Chaita ji?
Just a comment, Mata, that I'm really appreciating the last 5 verses, giving such an in-depth description of Lord Shiva.
Good.
It's
Good.
unusual, so it's
Well,
very valuable.
Very, very. If you read the Bhagavatam, which we're doing, his presence is constant. Lord Shiva is always there. And sometimes in the beginning, we cast it away. There's so much to grasp. But this is a very intimate thing to understand this aspect of Lord Shiva. I'm glad that you appreciate it. Thank you. Ian, why don't you continue?
Okay, welcome back, Martha.
Thank you, sweetie.
Okay, text 30 and 31. Maitreya said, Diti was just informed by her husband, but she was pressed by Cupid for sexual satisfaction. She caught hold of the clothing of the great Brahmana sage, just like a shameless public prostitute. Understanding his wife's purpose, Kasyap was obliged to perform the forbidden act, and just after offering his obeisances unto worshipable faith, he lay with her in a secluded place. Purport: it appears from the talks of Kasyapa with his wife that he was a worshipper of Lord Shiva, and although he knew that Lord Shiva would not be pleased with him for such a forbidden act, he was obliged to act by his wife's desire, and thus he offered his obeisances unto faith. He knew that the child born of such untimely sexual intercourse would certainly not be a good child, but could not protect himself because he was too obligated rather to his wife. In a similar case, however, when Thakur Haridas was tempted by a public prostitute at the dead of night, he avoided the allurement because of his perfection in Krishna consciousness. That is the difference between a Krishna conscious person and others. Kasyapa Muni was greatly learned and enlightened, and he knew all the rules and regulations of systematic life, yet he failed to protect himself from the attack of sex desire. Thakur Haridas was not born of a Brahmana family, nor was he himself a Brahmana, yet he could protect himself from such an attack due to his being Krishna conscious. Thakur Haridas used to chant the whole name of the Lord 300,000 times daily. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So Haridas Thakur is my hero.
Yeah.
And we're going to see later that, or did we already read that verse where Maitreya refers to Vidura as hero? He's a hero. A hero is someone who conquers the material energy. What else do you think about this? Does this enthuse you to get deep into your Krishna consciousness, transcend the modes of nature as they attack us?
Yes, because it's important. Kasyapa Muni was learned, but as he said that he wasn't very strong, and he was a Brahmana, and the comparison with Thakur Haridas, that he was able to protect himself from the prostitute who went to see him at dead of night.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the potency of bhakti. Thank you.
And, and just a little point there before you go.
Yes.
In the text 30, where she caught hold of the clothing of the great Brahmana sage, just like a shameless public prostitute. And I noted in the comments that the difference between a wife and a prostitute, and in a regulated family life, she's constrained by certain rules and regulations. But the prostitute, she can do anything. So you notice, he says she'd behave like a public prostitute.
Yeah, because she wasn't following the rules and regulations of householder life. Is that what?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Good observation. Even within the householder life, the relationship between husband and wife has to be with etiquette and high Krishna consciousness. That's why when we were talking about duty, the duty is toward Krishna. That's our main motivation. Thank you so much, Ian. And Anita, would you read Anita? And then Gopa, and then we'll have to start the whole thing again, which is wonderful. Anita.
Yes, I am here.
Hello, Anita. Could you make sure that your mic is close to your mouth and you read slowly and clearly?
Okay, I will try.
Thank you, darling.
Srimad-Bhagavatam 3:14-32. Thereafter the Brahmana took his bath in the water and controlled his speech by practicing trance, meditating on the eternal effulgence, and chanting the holy Gayatri hymns within his mouth. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Kashyap Muni meditated on the impersonal Brahmjyoti by chanting the Gayatri mantra within his mouth. When a Vedic mantra is chanted within the mouth so that only the chanter can hear, the chanting is called japa. But when such mantras are chanted loudly, it is called kirtana. The Vedic hymn Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare can be chanted both softly to oneself or loudly. Therefore, it is called Maha Mantra or the Great Hymn.
Oh, that's a very nice information. That's why it's called the Maha Mantra. Anything else that you need to say about this, Anita? Can you?
No, I think this is very self-explanatory, So that is they're giving the importance of the Maha Mantras, So
Yeah, that's wonderful. Anything about the Maha Mantra we love. Thank you, Anita. Now let's hear from Gopa. Gopa, you're going to do some reading for us.
Alrighty.
Actually, Nanda raised her hand.
Oh, Nandaji. Sorry. Uh-oh.
No, I have a question. I have a question about the purport, the part of the purport that you didn't print there. Because the next paragraph says Kasyapa Muni appears to be an impersonalist. Do you have any comments on that? Because I remember when Kasyapa is doing his meditation and the Lord appears to him. So how is it that he's now considered an impersonalist?
Unmute.
I'm not sure of that. If anybody else has some realizations, I also caught my attention. I was telling Sama that he's not only the father of these two demons that will be born, he's the father of all the demigods. He's the father of God himself. Vamanadev.
Vamanadev. Seisha, it's up to you now. Seisha ji.
Well, is it something like the four Kumaras the four Kumaras, they were Brahmavadis, but then they smelled the Tulsi and the lotus feet of the Lord and became bhaktas. So is Kashyapa in a similar kind of position?
Maybe. Yeah, nice idea. Yes, maybe he's just immature at this time.
Yeah.
Well, he's certainly an exalted personality, being one of the Prajapatis, producing so many living entities in the material world. It's an interesting thing to keep in mind to see how it might be answered more clearly later. Okay, thank you, Gopaji.
Srimad-Bhagavatam 3:14-33-34. O son of Bharat family, Diti after this went near to her husband. Her face lowered because of her faulty actions. She spoke as follows. The beautiful Diti said, my dear Brahmana, kindly see that my embryo is not killed by Lord Shiva, the Lord of all living entities, because of the great offense I have committed against him. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Deity was conscious of her offense and was anxious to be excused by Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva has two popular names, Rudra and Ashutosh. He is a Ashutosha?
Either one, Ashutosh.
Okay, all right. He is very prone to anger as well as quickly pacified. DT knew that because of his being quickly angered, he might spoil the pregnancy she had so unlawfully achieved. But because he was also a show, anyway, she implored her Brahmin husband. Ashutosh. She implored her Brahmin husband to help her in pacifying Lord Shiva, for her husband was a great devotee of Lord Shiva. In other words, Lord Shiva might have been angry with Diti because she obliged her husband to transgress the law, but he would not refuse her husband's prayer. Therefore, the application for excuse was submitted through her husband, and she prayed to Lord Shiva as follows.
Okay, read the next one, Gopaji, and then we'll talk about it.
Okay, let me offer my obeisances unto the angry Lord Shiva, who is simultaneously the very ferocious great demigod and the fulfiller of all material desires. He is all auspicious and forgiving, but his anger can immediately move him to chastise. Let him be pleased with us, since he is my brother-in-law, the husband of my sister Sati. He's also the worshipable Lord of all women. He is the personality of all opulences and can show mercy towards women who are excused even by the uncivilized hunters. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Lord Shiva is the husband of Sati, one of the sisters of Diti. Diti invoked the pleasure of her sister Sati so that Sati would request her husband to excuse her. Besides that, Lord Shiva is the worshipable Lord of all women. He is naturally very kind towards women, on whom even the uncivilized hunters also show their mercy. Since Lord Shiva is himself associated with women, he knows very well their defective nature, and he might not take very seriously Diti's unavoidable offense, which occurred due to her faulty nature. Every virgin girl is supposed to be a devotee of Lord Shiva. Diti remembered her childhood worship of Lord Shiva and begged his mercy.
What strikes you here, Go?
It's like a transcendental soap opera, isn't it?
Very intense. Wait until the next verse comes up.
Yeah.
That's really, really intense.
But it's just really, since Lord Shiva is himself associated with women, he knows very well their defective nature, and he might not take very seriously the offense, which is very merciful.
Yeah, that's true. Go on.
I didn't know that every virgin girl was supposed to be a devotee of Lord Shiva.
Yeah, in India, you see that the young girls, they all go together to the temple to worship Lord Shiva to get a good husband. That's the whole
right,
point.
And that's what the gopis did too, right?
Yeah, I think they prayed to Katyayani for that.
Okay.
Krishna would be her husband. But that's in Braj, it might be a little different in Braj. But most young girls pray to Lord Shiva for he's very merciful. He's very merciful, but he's angered very quickly. So both are there. Okay, let's what?
I said, he flips the coin very easily.
Very easily.
He gets angry really, really quick, but then immediately he can be pacified, which is amazing.
Yeah, he's very kind to the most fallen. So actually, he's a good shelter. Thank you, Go. But let's go, Tisha. How are you following all this, Tisha? Is this like you're getting now? You're going to read a very intense section here. And the next, Pati, is this the next slide?
Yeah.
Oh, not yet. Okay, well, you saved.
It is the next slide.
Okay, so read this. Are you following this? I just want to make sure that what are you thinking about all this?
I was just thinking in my mind as this whole scene is playing out, how much of it is Diti's desire, or maybe the thought came from Krishna, who put that desire in her so that this whole scene could play out. I mean, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it is. Everything's coming from Krishna, and we remember the giant Vijay from the spiritual world were cursed by the four Kumars to take birth in the material world. So she's a really big player. She's gonna give them an opportunity to fulfill their penance in the material world, and so it's okay, good.
I
But
guess
go on.
I was thinking about one of the, I think Prabhupada says later, or in one of the forum posts, about even these things, they seem like they're benedictions, even if there's something that you do that is undesirable or faulty, can somehow turn into a benediction. So
Yeah, good. Everything that's called faith. You have faith that even though it doesn't look right now, this is what you're supposed to do, and you'll see the benediction later. Good.
Right.
Very good way to look at it. All right, why don't you continue reading? We're almost finished.
Srimad-Bhagavatam 3:14, verse 37. Maitreya said, the great sage Kashyapa thus addressed his wife, who was trembling because of fear that her husband was offended. She understood that he had dissuaded from his daily duties of offering evening prayers, yet she desired the welfare of her children in the world. The learned Kashyapa said, because of your minds being polluted, because of defilement of the particular time, because of your negligence of my directions, and because of your being apathetic to the demigods, everything was inauspicious. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The conditions for having good progeny in society are that the husband should be disciplined in religious and regulative principles, and the wife should be faithful to the husband. In Bhagavad Gita 7:11, it is said that sexual intercourse, according to religious principles, is a representation of Krishna consciousness. Before engaging in sexual intercourse, both the husband and the wife must consider their mental condition, the particular time, the husband's direction, and the obedience of the demigods. According to Vedic society, there is a suitable, auspicious time for sex life, which is called the time of Garbhadhyana. Diti neglected all the principles of scriptural injunction, and therefore, although she was very anxious for auspicious children, she was informed that her children would not be worthy to be the sons of a Brahmana.
You have to unmute, Sama.
Go on reading the next verse. Tisha.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, what? Seshaji.
Seems like DT is being put to blame here, but we read earlier that Kashyapa was because of his weakness that things move forward. But we see no trace of that in this verse, at least. Anybody else notice that or feel it's?
Well, on the other side, there is a plan. Oh, there's Nanda with the answer. Okay,
No, not
Nandaji.
the answer. I'm agreeing with him. I was going to say the same thing, but not in such a nice tone. So I'm glad you said it.
I kind of like that the point that Tisha brought up, actually, that it's all the plan of the Lord ultimately to incarnate as Varahadev and to relieve his devotees of their sinful reaction to not allowing the four Kumars to enter the spiritual world. That's what. Here's Chaita with a Chaitaji. Can you add to this? You had something to say? Unmute, sweetie. Unmute.
Absolutely, it is a divine setup for the incarnation of Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. But there's so many lessons to be gleaned from this lack of self-restraint. I was wondering if there's anyone who's familiar with the Garbhodana.
Garbhodana Sanskara.
Is there, what actually is the suitable auspicious time?
Well, definitely not when she was asking for it.
Yes.
I don't think there's a universal time. Actually, what a person would do is go to an astrologer and ask when would be a suitable time. That's
Okay.
actually how Vyasadeva was born. Parasara Muni, his father, was a great astrologer. And when he was aware that a super auspicious time had come, he arranged to have union with Satyavati, even though they weren't properly married. The time was so auspicious that he impregnated her, and she became the father of Vyasadeva. But that's my understanding that it has to be calculated.
Well,
Thank you.
Here the name of the chapter is Pregnancy of Deity in the Evening. Now, in the evening is kind of a phrase that's just kind of hanging out there, unless you take it that the evening was the inauspicious time. That's all I.
Yeah, in general, that time during dusk is a time when ghosts travel in ethereal space, as mentioned. Lord Shiva travels with his ghostly associates at that time.
Thank you very much.
So we're continuing on. I'm taking over. Someone needs to take a little break there. But Tisha, can you tell me who the next person is to read? Because I don't have that information.
I want to say it was Midoriya.
Okay, Midoriya Leela, are
Yeah.
you there? Can you read text 39 to 41, please, and purports?
I can, but I don't think I was the next one. But
Go
anyway,
ahead, anyway, just you do it as service.
also just but the last comment I wanted to say too, that even in the evening, it's recommended that you don't take a nap, because that's when, like you're saying, the ghosts travel and they can enter through the saliva into the body. Okay, Srimad-Bhagavatam 3:14, 39 to 41. O haughty one, you will have two contemptuous sons born of your condemned womb. Unlucky woman, they will cause constant lamentation to all the three worlds. They will kill poor, faultless living entities, torture women, and enrage the great souls. At that time, the Lord of the universe, the Supreme Personality, Godhead, who is the well-wisher of all living entities, will descend and kill them, just as Indra smashes the mountains with his thunderbolts. Prabhupada's purport. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita 4:8, the Lord descends as an incarnation to deliver the devotees and kill the miscreants. The Lord of the universe and of everything would appear to kill the sons of Diti because of their offending the devotees of the Lord. Supreme Personality Godhead does not need to descend in order to kill any strongly built body. He comes down just for the sake of his devotees. Everyone is subject to the miseries offered by the material nature. But because the activities of miscreants, such as killing innocent people and animals or torturing women, are harmful to everyone and are therefore a source of pain to the devotees, the Lord comes down. He descends only to give relief to his ardent devotees. The killing of the miscreants by the Lord is also the mercy of the Lord towards the miscreant, although apparently the Lord takes the side of the devotees. Since the Lord is absolute, there's no difference between his activities of killing the miscreants and favoring the devotees.
Can you summarize that point that Srila Prabhupada's making there in the purport that you have? What's the summary? He's making 2 points there about the Lord's descent.
Well, one is that there's no difference between the Lord's activities of killing or favoring. In either case, the subject gets benefit, and he comes to not just kill. He doesn't have to come down to kill these miscreants. He comes down to for the devotees to what does it say? He descends only to give relief to his ardent devotees. He doesn't have to kill them. He doesn't have to come to kill them, but he comes for their pleasure.
Yeah. That's an important point to remember, that he comes to enliven the devotees, to protect the devotees, not necessarily protect them physically either, but protect their faith in him and enliven that. Any points that you'd like to make, Dhruva Prabhu?
No, we can move on. Thank you.
Okay. So again, Tisha, you have to tell me who's next because I haven't been paying attention to that.
Premananda.
Okay, thank you. Premananda Prabhu.
Okay. Srimad-Bhagavatam 3:14, 42-43. And Diti said, "It is very good that my sons should be magnanimously killed by the arms of the personality of Godhead with his Sudarshan weapon. O my husband, may they never be killed by the wrath of the Brahmana devotees. A person who is condemned by a Brahman or is always fearful to other living entities is not favored either by those who are already in hell or by those in the species in which he is born." Purport by Srila Prabhupada. When Diti heard from her husband that the great souls would be angered by the activities of her sons, she was very anxious. She thought that her sons might be killed by the wrath of the Brahmanas. The Lord does not appear when the Brahmanas become angry at someone, because the wrath of the Brahmana is sufficient in itself. He certainly appears, however, when his devotees simply become sorry. A devotee of the Lord never prays to the Lord to appear for the sake of the troubles the miscreants cause for him, and he never bothers him by asking for protection. Rather, the Lord is anxious to give protection to the devotees. Diti knew well that the killing of her sons by the Lord would also be his mercy, and therefore she says that the will and arms of the Lord are magnanimous. If someone is killed by the will of the Lord and is thus fortunate enough to see the arms of the Lord, that is sufficient for his liberation. Such good fortune is not achieved even by the great sages.
So do you have some comments on that, Prabhu?
Well, what really struck me is that Diti preferred that she would rather be punished by her sons would rather be punished by the Supreme Lord rather than the Brahmana, because we should be very respectful to the Brahmana, and the Brahmana's curse are very, very fearful, even though there could be hidden benediction in their curses, but you really don't want to offend the Brahmanas. That's like a big Vaishnava parat. So that's something that I take away from this.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Sesha Prabhu, Jai Shri, you have a comment or question?
Well, I feel like you see that more in some other religions about praying for the Lord for their troubles or for their illness to heal someone or to get someone through this. And I don't know. I mean, I guess we pray for devotees to have strength to tolerate whatever is coming at us, but I feel like we understand it so much better than what you see in some other religious groups. I don't know. I just want to say that.
Yeah. No, that's important. And the point I believe that you're making is that unless people understand that the Lord is there he's not there just be our order supplier. Like we also pray for devotees that are in distress or in troubling situations, but we're praying, like you mentioned, for their consciousness so that their consciousness can stay at the lotus feet of the Lord and appreciate the trials and tribulations as an impetus to push us forward on our path back to Godhead. Whereas if you're just praying for relief of the distress for the body, then it's inevitably you're going to be disappointed because you're thinking your prayer is not answered sufficiently or whatever, because the body's going to end up where it's going to end up. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for that. Sesha Prabhu, if you were willing to continue, that'd be nice.
Srimad-Bhagavatam 3:14, 44, 47. The learned Kashyapa said, "Because of your lamentation, penitence, what is it?
Penitence
Penitence and proper deliberation and also because of your unflinching faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead and your adoration of Lord Shiva and me, one of the sons, Prahlad, of your son, Hiranyakasipu, will be an approved devotee of the Lord, and his fame will be broadcast equally with that of the personality of Godhead. In order to follow in its footsteps, saintly persons will try to emulate his character by practicing freedom from animosity, just as the purifying process rectifies gold of inferior quality. Everyone will be pleased with him because the personality of Godhead, the supreme controller of the universe, is always satisfied with a devotee who does not wish for anything beyond him.
And you can go for the purport if your voice allows.
Purport. In the conditioned state, every living being is envious of another living being, but in the liberated state, there is an absence of animosity. Prahlad Maharaj was tortured by his father in so many ways, yet after the death of his father, he prayed for his father's liberation by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He did not ask for any benediction that he might have asked, but he prayed that his atheistic father might be liberated. He thus cursed any of the persons who engaged in torturing him at the instigation of his father. He never cursed any of the persons who engaged in torturing him at the instigation of his father. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is situated everywhere as a supersoul, and he can dictate to anyone and everyone as he likes. The would-be grandson of Diti, who was predicted to be a great devotee, would be liked by everyone, even by the enemies of his father, because he would have no other vision besides the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A pure devotee of the Lord sees the presence of his worshipful Lord everywhere. The Lord reciprocates in such a way that all living entities in whom the Lord is dwelling as a supersoul also are like a pure devotee, because the Lord is present in their hearts and can dictate to them to be friendly to his devotee. There are many instances in history wherein even the most ferocious animal became friendly to a pure devotee of the Lord.
Thank you. Do you have any comments or
Yeah,
points
I
you'd like
think
to
that
emphasize?
one thing that strikes me when I first started reading the verses was that any question about how this is working out according
You're breaking out. You're breaking out. Could you just repeat that last thing that you were saying?
Yeah, any consideration of about this past time, whether they're right and wrong, or who's to blame, or who followed their duty, who didn't follow their duty, all of that is sort of I don't want to say overshadowed, because that's kind of like a negative connotation, but the fact that Prahlad Maharaj is going to appear in the family sort of like makes it all worthwhile or something.
Yeah, totally.
Because all of a sudden this great devotee Prahlad Maharaj is brought into the Leela here, and that's ultimately beneficial for everyone, whether they're personalist, impersonalist, agitated by sex desire, not agitated by sex desire, doing their duty, not doing their duty. All of that is relativized by the fact that a great devotee will appear. That's
Yeah. Yeah, good point. And I would just like to add, if I may, I would like to edit your last sentence where you said that all of it is relativized, and I thought of the word pacified, because my mind was agitated by deities getting blamed and not giving us, but it's pacified by,
That's the word. That's the word, pacified.
And just another quick comment. I know that we're at close to the end or near the end, but anyway, Srimad-Bhagavatam, 5th canto, 18th chapter, 9th verse. I just happen to have it right here in front of me because I'm trying to learn it for Lord Nrsingadev's appearance day. Is Prahlad's, one of Prahlad's very wonderful prayers to Lord Nrsingadev. And here it is. This is the 9th verse. May there be good fortune throughout the universe. May all envious persons be pacified. May all living entities become calm by practicing bhakti yoga. For by accepting devotional service, they will think of each other's welfare. Therefore, let us all engage in the service of the supreme transcendence, Lord Sri Krishna, and always remain absorbed in thought of him. Now, if that isn't the panacea to pacify everyone in the world, and what an exalted state of consciousness Prahlad's in, that's like exhibits it so nicely. Are there more verses, Dhruva Prabhu? Okay, so
There are 3 more slides, Nanda.
okay, all right. So Manvantara Prabhu, could you read that one, please? The one that's up?
Text 48. The topmost devotee of the Lord will have expanded intelligence and expanded influence, and will be the greatest of the great souls. Due to mature devotional service, he will certainly be situated in transcendental ecstasy and will enter the spiritual sky after quitting this material world. Purport. There are 3 stages of transcendental development in devotional service, which are technically called Satya Bhava, Anubhava, and Maha Bhava. Continual perfect love of Godhead is called Sthayi Bhava, and when it is performed in a particular type of transcendental relationship, it is called Anubhava. But the stage of Maha Bhava is visible amongst the personal pleasure potencies of the Lord. It is understood that the grandson of Diti, namely Prahlad Maharaj, would constantly meditate on the Lord and reiterate his activities. Because he would constantly remain in meditation, he would easily transfer himself to the spiritual world after quitting his material body. Such meditation is still more conveniently performed by chanting and hearing the holy name of the Lord. This is especially recommended in this age of Kali.
Thank you. And for the sake of moving on, we'll hold our tongues on this one for a bit. Anita Prabhu, can you read the next slide, please? 49 and 50.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. This is Anita. Srimad-Bhagavatam 3:14, 49 and 50. He will be virtuously qualified reservoir of all good qualities. He will be jolly and happy in others' happiness, distressed in others' distress, and will have no enemies. He will be destroyer of the lamentation of all universes, like the pleasant moon after the summer sun. Your grandson will be able to see inside and outside the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose wife is beautiful goddess of fortune. The Lord can assume the form desired by the devotee, and his face is always beautifully decorated with the earrings. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. It is predicted herewith that the grandson of Diti, Prahlad Maharaj, would not only see the personality of Godhead within himself by meditation, but would also be able to see him personally with his eyes. This direct vision is possibly only for one who is highly elevated in Krishna consciousness, for the Lord is not possible to see with material eyes. A devotee does not imagine something whimsical about the form of the Lord, nor does he ever think that the Lord is impersonal and can assume a form desired by the non-devotee. The non-devotee has no idea of the form of the Lord, and thus he cannot think of any one of the above-mentioned forms. But whenever a devotee sees the Lord, he sees him in a most beautifully decorated form, accompanied by his constant companion, the goddess of fortune, who is eternally beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, dear. Okay, Jai Shri, you want to read the last two verses of this chapter and our study for today?
Sure. This Srimad-Bhagavatam 3:14-51. The
Oh.
sage Midoriya said, hearing that her grandson would be a great devotee and that her sons would be killed by Krishna, Diti was highly pleased in mind. Purport. Diti was very aggrieved to learn that because of her untimely pregnancy, her sons would be demons and would fight with the Lord. But when she heard that her grandson would be a great devotee and that her two sons would be killed by the Lord, she was very satisfied. As the wife of a great sage and the daughter of a great Prajapati, Daksha, she knew that being killed by the personality of Godhead is a great fortune. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the third canto, 14th chapter of Srimad-Bhagavatam, entitled Pregnancy of Diti in the Evening.
So do you have any words of wisdom do you want to share with us, Jai Shri, about the purport there? In the last three verses.
So much hope for grandchildren.
That's a way to see it. True, it's true. Also about Diti's vision, because I mean, how can she be pleased that her sons are going to be killed by the Supreme Lord unless she's an elevated transcendental personality? You know, that's there, and something that's been mentioned before quite a bit, but still is very pertinent. If we look for the Lord's kind hand in our life, then we'll be able to see it. And if you don't look for the Lord's kind hand, you won't see it. You'll see it. How come my sons are being killed and this and that? But actually, they're being killed by the Lord, and your grandson's going to be a great devotee. So, like you said, there's great hope. Dhruva Maharaj Prabhu.
I'm just appreciating everybody's comments. It's really getting thicker and thicker as we go through the forest of these pastimes.
Okay, nicely said. Are we ending up here? Do you have any-
Okay. Anybody else have anything?
Thank you, Nanda. Thank you, Dhruva.
Okay, thank
All
you.
glories to your service.
All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Haribol.
Panchakalpatubhischa, kripa sindhubheva cha, patitanam pavanebhyo, Vaishnaveva namo.
Jai Shri Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Haribol
Haribol.
Sama.
Okay.
Jai.